Move on from there, and welcome to you, Sandy. And if we're going to kill people on the battlefield in very large numbers, we're also targeting our elderly via the assisted dying bill.
Indeed, and not just the elderly. It's it had its second reading this week on last Friday. On the 19th of September in the Lords. And they set up a special select committee to take detailed evidence and to scrutinise the bill. The bill was formerly the Terminally Ill Adults End of Life Bill, and it cleared its second reading. So it remains on the statute book track and proceeds through the Lord's stages, obviously. Due to much opposition from some peers, rather than moving immediately to normal committee report stages, the House agreed to appoint a select committee to gather evidence from professional bodies, coroners, ministers and other bodies involved. The committee will publish the evidence it hears, but unusually it's not being asked to make amendment recommendations, which makes me feel that they are going to try and push this through without a doubt. The committee was given a reporting deadline, so they've been asked to report back by the 7th of November, which is quite soon. Ministers such as the Health and Justice Secretaries are expected to give evidence. So, it's pushing its way through. So if the Lord's bill is amended, it will return to the House of Commons for consideration of those amendments. If no blocking amendments pass, the bill can proceed through both houses towards royal assent. So there we have it. Now, there was a lot of opposition. I don't know, many people may have watched the Hansard on all this, but Baroness Finlay and Lord Daniel Moylan had something to say about this, and we've got some footage of both of those now. So if we could roll that footage.
The bill doesn't require any attempt to relieve pain or suffering, even if they're present. It puts the power in the hands of the two assessing doctors, who may know nothing about the conditions of the person, who cannot detect undue influence or coercion, and whose motivation may be opaque. Prognosis is a guess, and diagnostic errors are common. These doctors do not need to be certain. Only on the balance of probabilities do they need to believe the criteria are met. With no oversight of their assessment, how can a panel approve the death with any certainty when there is no ability to appeal against a panel approval and no coroner oversight? How many wrongful deaths a year is acceptable? No system can be 100% safe. Providing massive drug overdoses in an unlicensed way to end life is not a therapeutic act.
It's notable that the words death and dying hardly appear. The poison to be used is described as an approved substance. The still mysterious contraption by which it is to be administered is called an approved device. And the business itself, when you get to clause 25, you'll find it's headed administration of assistance, provision of assistance. Assistance, in fact, is the term used throughout the whole of the bill. Is this something that's going to become part of our daily language? Have you considered assistance, Mrs. Smith? My lords, we know what this is. It is euphemism, an old ancient Greek device for hiding from the gods through the use of flowery language, something of which you are ashamed. And that's what the language of this bill is constantly expressing at every turn. My lords, I think we are right to be ashamed of what is in this bill.
I think he spoke very eloquently. There's definitely something very shady about all of this. And obviously, Lord Falconer is the person pushing this alongside Esther Ranson, and he's a major player in pushing this bill through. Now, it's interesting. He did have to make an admission in the House of Lords, and I think we have some footage of that admission about the funding towards the assisted dying bill, and there's some shady things going on. So I'll let you make your own minds up.
My Lords, I draw attention to my entry in the Register of Members' Interests, which refers to the fact that I have an assistant funded by Bernard Lewis to assist me in the conduct of this bill, and Dignity in Dying funded the printing of literature, which I sent to your Lordships in connection with the bill. I apologise for not mentioning this in my opening speech. My Lords, this has been a debate.
So he admitted that actually that some of the literature was funded by Dignity in Dying, and these there's two companies that are intrinsically linked. It's Dignity in Dying, and the other one is I think it's called the Compassionate Dying organisation. Now, both of these are linked to the Bernard Lewis Trust, who were funding a lot of the assisted dying bill. So who owns that trust? It's the Lewis Family Trust, the Bernard Lewis Family Trust, and they're part of the River Island fame. That's where they made their money. Like most corporate capitalists, the family has its fingers in multi-nefarious pies. The founder, Bernard Lewis, is responsible for the family's fortunes. Companies House lists him alone as an active director of no fewer than, I think it's 20 corporations, and another company called Cavendish Square Secretariat acts as secretary for 52 other companies. It's owned by the Lewis Trust Group. The group's portfolio spans various investment companies in England, property development in Poland, and a chain of hotels in Israel and the US. And if the company it keeps, or rather the other organisation it donates to, is anything to go by, it seems it sits very comfortably amongst neoliberal circles. So let's look at some of these organisations that received funding from Bernard Lewis Trust. Dignity in Dying, and it's got a sister company called Compassion in Dying. Now, Dignity in Dying had an income of 2.6 million in 2023, up from 1.7 million in 2022. Over 2 million was spent on lobbying, PR, media research, and funding to push the assisted dying bill. Crucially, the accounts do not disclose who the high-value donors are. Compassion in Dying charity, they show a clearer donor information. In 2023, it owed $139,000 to Dignity in Dying for staffing and overheads, meaning its donors are indirectly funding lobbying, and they are very linked, these two companies. Now, the trust, the Bernard Lewis Trust, donated well over 1.8 million in documented donations to Dignity in Dying and Compassionate Dying. Other recipients of the Lewis Trust's money were the Conservative Party, and from Bernard Lewis personally, he donated, I think it was 46,000 to personally to the Conservative Party, as well as 52 million between 2008 and 2010. And a network of nefarious think tank, dark think tanks, the Henry Jackson Society, the Centre for Social Justice, Policy Exchange, Demos, as well as Zionist organisations such as the Community Security Trust, and the Jewish Leadership Council. So all of this is being funded by many organisations that we have nothing. We know nothing about. They're just pushing money into this. So it's heavily funded by billionaire capitalists and opaque trusts, not grassroots donations. And the same backers also bankroll neoliberal and Zionist organisation, raising concerns that the push for assisted dying aligns with ideological and economic agendas, but that devalue vulnerable lives, both here in the UK and abroad. So let's look at the hypocrisy of the funding. 8.12 million has been spent by lobbyists and wealthy donors to promote assisted dying over roughly a decade. Meanwhile, the annual funding gap for palliative care is in the hundreds of millions. The government has reduced its funding of hospice and palliative care by 47 million in the last 18 months, with hospices forced to run cake stalls, sales, charity shops, and marathons to stay afloat. In other words, just a fraction of the private money poured into lobbying for assisted dying could have transformed palliative provision for thousands of dying people, providing pain relief, hospital beds, and support for families. It's clear that wealthy donors have chosen to bankroll campaigns that make death more accessible. Yet those same resources are not being directed towards making life until natural death more comfortable. Society is left in a position where it's easier and cheaper to promote a lethal injection than to guarantee proper palliative care. Not because of public will, but because lobbying is better funded than compassion. This is deeply concerning. And I think we have a video now from, I think his name's Dr. Miller, and he kind of puts it into perspective, and I think we should listen to this. It kind of puts it all in one place. Make your own minds up. Thank you.
That's a minor change compared with this century's growth in the world population from 6.1 billion to 8.2 billion. A 25% increase in 25 years. But just think what the 2025 numbers would be if abortion had not been legalized, or there had not been wide-scale usage and advocacy of contraception. And indeed, the growth of homosexuality throughout society has reduced the number of children we would have had the churches had their way. We would have had a very much bigger population than we presently have, facing the difficulties we have with climate change.
Well, Sandy, thank you very much for that. It's a very, very serious and, as you say, dark agenda. And it's also deeply disturbing that there's huge amounts of money coming in order effectively to lobby and manipulate the government into going down this path, when the same money spent could have a very much more human and compassionate outcome if it was put towards caring for people who were heading towards terminal illness. So lots of questions to be asked. We are a little bit uncertain about the name of the gentleman speaking there in the House of Lords. We'll check that up and we'll make sure we've got that correct in extra today. But a lot to be discussed.